So today is a sad day for the owner of this neighboring property. Our engineers have inspected this house and found it is plagued. It is riddled with problems. The owner has decided he's not going to go forward with this build, but this bad story does end with some good news, because we're going to turn what's bad into something good for the present owner. Keep watching to find out. Before we continue with part 2 of Costa Rica construction's gone wrong, let's recap and see what problems we had in part 1. But first, remember. And unfortunately, if you go to YouTube and you do just a little bit of research and you type in Costa Rica construction, you're going to find mishap, build gone bad, horror story. You find story after story.
So important that you have a good lawyer and good real estate agent that you can trust. There's a lot of money to be made in real estate. Sadly, you can't trust anybody.
Anytime I've seen a house built with cement blocks, the blocks are always staggered. So you'll have your first row, and then the second row is staggered halfway, and then the next row halfway. That way they run this rebarb all the way down, and that really creates this unified bond. It creates a extremely strong wall because everything is interlocking, okay? It's important that these columns, when they are poured, that they're poured correctly. So if we take a look at this particular house, you can see, look at this right here. Well, you can literally, look at how I'm pulling off this cement by hand. Well, that is a huge, huge mistake. Whenever they mix the cement, they didn't take their time to make sure that it was the right proportion of cement to sand to gravel. He says it looks like they just threw it in there and never bothered to count because all of them have a different proportion. In other words, they will all have different varying strengths because it wasn't poured correctly.
Until we discovered that the contractor had actually sealed or stained all of the dirt and dust into the floor, so it ended up feeling like sandpaper.
If a contractor tells you your house will be done in 6 or 7 months, add a couple of months. So it's very important you supervise as often as you can. My friend's husband was there every single day to supervise.
It would have took a year and come up to be a disaster.
Did y'all catch that? A year. And this was not from the ground up build. It was a renovation and adding. I think we added a space on the porch. We added a bathroom.
Understand that the workers actually get paid by the hour. So sadly what happens a lot here in Costa Rica, they are sort of slacking, they're going really slow, or you know, when it rains, for example, they're supposed to stop and go home. They stay on, wait until the rain passes, which doesn't happen in rainy season, and you'll be charged all these hours. They're just there doing nothing.
About how somebody with these dreams and aspirations to come to Costa Rica and enjoy this happy life ends up losing thousands upon thousands of dollars, many of them cutting their losses and going back to the United States with their tail tucked between their legs, simply because they didn't know what I'm teaching you. Wow. You've seen 3 things so far in this build, heard true stories from others. Let's continue with part 2 and see what else could possibly go wrong with a Costa Rica construction build. When you come to Costa Rica, you're going to notice that the majority of the houses are built from cement. And so you got to ask yourself, well, why is that? And that's simply because that's what they have used for generation after generation after generation. And so the question you need to ask yourself is that the best material to build my house out of? You know, my dad was an excellent carpenter. And so he went to school, he learned how to build, and he actually built my very first house. Whenever I bought a store, he built that store or expanded on that store. But while he was an exceptional carpenter, he never improved his skills or kept up with technology. And so as the years went by, 10 years, 15, 20 years later, well, his carpentry skills, while they still looked great, well, they looked old-fashioned because he didn't keep up with the times. And that's exactly what's happening in Costa Rica. You see, they have been building with cement their entire lives, and while all of the builders, or 90% of them, will tell you, oh, the best material to use is cement, well, that's simply because that's what he's been using, his father used, and generations before him have used. And that's not entirely true. See, there are a lot of materials that are far better to build out of, and you simply need to know that because Costa Rica is such a wet area for 6 months out of the year, you have so much moisture that concrete is the perfect breeding ground to create mold. And once that mold gets inside the cement, well, you can have some serious health problems. So there are so many materials out there that are resistant to mold that you can build with. So you can be thinking, well, should I build with wood? If I have wood, what kind of wood? Is it going to be a termite problem? Should I build with cement? Because in some scenarios, then it's okay to build with cement, but you need to make sure that you build it the proper way and in the right scenario so that you don't have different problems, okay? Should you be building with metal? Metal is great, especially in an area where there's earthquakes, because then it gives, okay? Where cement, it's not very forgiving. It doesn't give. So there's a lot of things that you do need to think about when it comes to choosing the right material for building your house. For this owner, well, he was told that, yes, build it out of cement. That's the best thing to build out of. And so let's talk about when you do build with cement, what are some of the things that you need to look out for? So the other day, I had my builder come out here and walk me through this house and point out some of these things I'm pointing out to you. And when we got to this column, I literally was scared because he says, take a look at this column. While at first glance it looks like it's all right, he says, watch this. So keep your eye here. Look at how much that column moves. Some of you are thinking, oh, well, Alan, it's not tied into the house yet. And that's what a bad builder would tell you, okay? But the reality is that when they build this, it should be on some sort of big foundational bottom, okay? So before you put your column up, you've got to dig out a great big huge square. That would be your foundational bottom that then you would build your column on. Okay, take a look at this rebarb right here. If I take this rebarb, well, I'm not feeling, where's that foundational base? And if I come down here, this foundational base should, in my opinion, have been tied to this foundational base as close as it is, so that it would be tied into the house, creating a good solid foundation. But I'm not seeing that, okay? Two guys could sit here and actually push it over. Once it's tied in, yes, it'd be a little stronger, but we could see that the rainwaters have washed this and it's caused this to be a whole lot weaker. And so this is just bad design. And we can see that with all of the columns that are out here on the outside. Now this house has some really awesome ocean views. From the second floor especially, you can just look out there and in some cases actually see the white waters hitting the shore. So like a lot of houses, you want to put in some really big windows all the way across so that you can enjoy those magnificent views. This house did the exact same thing, but that's where our next problem comes in. But let me remind you, the most serious problem I'm going to talk about at the very end. And you definitely don't want to live with that at any cost. So this scenario, we have a wall that's probably, looks like to me, about 12 foot long, okay? Or 12 foot wide. Well, in every window, in a typical house, whenever you're building a place for the windows and the doors, there's always what's called a header. So there's a header that goes over the opening. That's what gives it structural strength, so that it holds everything above that header, so that anytime when things settle, concrete settles, anything, then there's no shifting, nothing comes down, because if there's not a proper header, then it could come down, just break your glass and cause you all kinds of problems. Well, in this example, we have this huge plate glass window. It looks like it's over 12 feet long. If you're going to put something in of that size, what you would normally do is have a huge metal beam, a strong metal beam that would go over the top of the column, all the way across top of that column, and in this scenario, you would have a metal beam going from that end all the way to this end, and it would give the whole house structural strength because you've got these concrete blocks that are over here. This is a second-story house, and you're going to have a lot of weight above it. Then you need a good, strong metal beam all the way across in order to have strength above your windows. In this scenario, there's not any kind of header at this point. So my guess is they had intended on pulling all of this down and building the header before they put the windows in there, okay? And you can do it, but it's not going to be nowhere near as strong. It's not going to be done proper. It's not going to be done the correct way. While that could be fixed, it now creates smaller windows because now you got to have room for that header. And in my house, we had 2x12 headers in there, so you would lose a foot of space right there. And as I look at all of these windows, even the small ones have no headers whatsoever. And that's not good, because if there's no header, any little earthquake, this starts shaking, and if the house begins to settle at all, well, then it's just going to break your glass. Now, this next problem is so serious that if the builder was to actually continue building this thing and at the very end, I'm sure it would look beautiful. Because, I mean, you can paint a tin building and make it look like a castle, okay? But is the foundation good? If we don't understand how it's been built, is there no structural strength to it? So if the builder was to actually complete this entire thing and then say, Alan, man, I like you so much. Here, I just want to give you this house. You couldn't pay me to actually take this house. And why is that? Because this house has a problem so serious that even after you paint it and it looks good, you would end up suffering for the rest of your life. What is that problem? It's mold. And you probably saw as I walked through lots of green mold, black mold. This place has got so much mold, and because it's inside of the cement blocks, right? Cement is porous. Well, it's growing in here and you can't get it out of there. If we look down here, you have mold that's inside these cement blocks. Once this house is covered up and built, you can't get that mold out. And so you're living the rest of your life and you're wondering how come you're constantly getting sick. You're wondering how come you're getting the flu. You're wondering how come you're having breathing problems. Well, if your house is not built properly, then it's going to get mold on it. And Costa Rica, 6 months out of the year, you practically have 100% humidity. It's raining so much. So when you build your house, there has to be some sort of separation from all of this block and the moisture so that your house doesn't immediately start growing mold. Now, the owner is going to have to demolish this whole thing. I can only imagine he's probably got a good solid at least $100,000 into it. And who wants to just throw away $100,000? Well, it's important that you understand it. The number one reason I agreed to film this 90-day series of building a house in Costa Rica is so I can help you avoid the costly mistakes, the time-consuming mistakes that so many people in Costa Rica have made. Costa Rica is an absolutely wonderful place. And so I don't want to scare you away from coming to Costa Rica, but I've always said if you can control the environment, you can really have an amazing experience, okay? However, if you can't control the environment, if you don't know what you're doing, then you can make mistake after mistake and you can lose a lot of money. And the owner of this Costa Rica construction gone wrong lost a lot of money. But we were able to turn his nightmare into a happy story. The owner of the 90-day challenge made his neighbor an offer to buy the property, and now we're going to extend this 90-day challenge to include more building on this new lot. The previous owner is happy because while he did lose money in the construction, at least he was able to get his money back for the lot. I'm excited to see what else we can build on this lot in Costa Rica. Subscribe
and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos.